How many new people we got? Any new people? New people? All right, new people. Welcome. My name is Nathan Robert Brown. I'm a writer and a mythologist, which, as everyone else here knows, means I'm poor. So that's good news. Great job choice on my part. And what we do here is we look at Naruto from a mythology perspective. We look at how Naruto is in itself a mythology. I was first introduced to the anime of Naruto, which, by the way, spoiler alert real quick, if you read the manga, you're fine, okay? You're fine. You're caught up. Nothing I'm going to say today is going to surprise you. However, if you haven't at least watched like the last few weeks, there might be some spoilers. Like if you had, like, you're good up to about a month ago. Like if you saw something like, did anyone see what happened today? No. I will not be mentioning it. So good news. I will not be mentioning it. However, just don't. Please don't ask me about it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone else. Okay, so during the Q&A session at the end, please don't ask me about what happened this week because I don't want to talk about it. People will hate me. So yeah, I was first introduced to Naruto when I was in college. I was writing the Complete Idiot's Guide to World Mythology because that was my first writing job, writing Complete Idiot's Guides because I was well qualified for it. And so I needed some way to kind of give myself a distraction from writing, so I'd work for a few hours and I'd watch an episode of Naruto. I'd work for a few hours and I'd watch an episode of Naruto. And I started the section on King Arthur. And I realized I'm sitting there reading and writing about a myth that's about a boy who's the son of a king and doesn't know it, and is tutored by a wise sage. And he has a weapon that was his father's weapon that not only facilitates his journey to becoming a king, but also protects him from harm. And then I started watching Naruto. And I like, hey, he's the son of a king and he doesn't know it. And hey, he's got a sage for a teacher too. And the next thing I know, I realize I'm looking at the same story. That was year one. For year one, we looked at how Naruto is kind of a modern Japanese retelling of the King Arthur story. Naruto is obviously the King Arthur character. And what I find interesting is about that comparison between the two, and I was talking about this, is that a lot of people were like, well, Arthur wasn't a very good knight. He wasn't. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the best fighter. He wasn't, the most awesome knight. He wasn't really good at horseback. I mean, the guy didn't even start really training to become a knight until he was king. So, that's kind of a problem. Naruto, not the best ninja at first either. He wore construction orange at first. He still does. And when he moved to the black and orange outfit, I was like, well, now he's trying to at least be a little stealthy, and now he looks like he's on fire all the time. Worst ninja ever. He's like, I'm on fire. He does not sneak up on people. And then you have Minato, obviously, Uther Pendragon. Minato is a much better father than Uther Pendragon was. Much better father, considering Uther wasn't even there, which, obviously Minato wasn't there either, except as a ghost. So there you go. And then you have, obviously, the Merlin figure, which is Jiraiya. And big fan of Jiraiya. I love Jiraiya. He's a writer, I'm a writer. We do our thing. Big fan. I like Jiraiya. He's got some issues, but big father. And that's all I'm going to say about that. He's just looking for love. Leave him alone. Will do. And then obviously you have the whole situation where King Arthur is betrayed by his best friend Lancelot over a girl in that situation. But Naruto, you have the situation with Naruto and Sasuke, very similar, is betrayed by his best friend. And he and his best friend are both kind of in this weird love triangle with the same woman, Guinevere, or Sakura. And a lot of people sometimes ask me, well, actually they don't ask me. I started telling them this, and then every year after I say that people ask me about it, but they don't. The reason I say that Sakura and Hinata are embodiments of Guinevere is that Guinevere is one of those weird figures in the Arthur myth where there are kind of two versions of Guinevere, and it depends on what culture and time period she was being written about in. Like the French stories about her that involve Lancelot, she's a very outspoken, kind of loud, abrasive. She can be, what's a not bad word to say for that? She can be a little bit mean sometimes. She makes Lancelot walk over a bridge of swords on his hands and knees. Yeah, it's kind of mean. And then you have the other Guinevere, which you see more in the older, more British, where she's more kind of a backdrop character. You know, it's like Guinevere was there. That's basically it. You know, like Arthur was there next to his queen, Guinevere, and she looked great. And so you have these two different embodiments of Guinevere. You have the kind of mousy, quiet, demure woman version of Guinevere, which is obviously Hinata. And then you have the more confident, loud, abrasive, scary, sometimes version of Guinevere that is more like Sakura. And if you don't think Sakura is scary, you've never seen Hermione. Hermione is frightening. And then obviously you have the QB Kitsune figure. And I compare it to Excalibur and Sword in the Stone. The Sword in the Stone and Excalibur they get kind of confused a lot. People think they're the same thing. They're not. The Sword in the Stone was the sword that Arthur basically pulled out, and it's like, hey, this kid pulled out a blade, and he's king. Awesome. Because that's a good system, basis for a system of government, is having children pull swords out of rocks. And then you have the Excalibur, and Excalibur was a lot cooler. And one of the things people don't know about Excalibur is that the scabbard was actually the best part. The scabbard of Excalibur protected Arthur from any harm, which, like, how unfair is that in a sword fight? Like, you know, like he's like, I have vanquished my enemies once again. It's like, you have a scabbard that made it impossible for me to hit you. This was not won by skill, okay? And so you kind of have the Kyubi and I find that interesting because for Naruto, a lot of times the Kyubi was the only reason he was able to do something. You know, like in the fight with Sasuke, that would have been over like the first time he landed in the water. That would have been the end, you know. And we got to watch him fall into the water 5 more times after that. It was just, you know, and keep coming back scarier and scarier each time because of the Kyubi. And the Kitsune, they're two people. And then also Arthur surrounds himself, what Arthur's true strength, oh, I messed up. There we go. Arthur's true strength comes not from him being this awesome warrior. King Arthur's true strength is the Knights of the Round Table. He surrounds himself with talented and virtuous warriors. And you have, obviously, the Konoha 10. And there we go. And you got the Konoha 10. This is basically King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. There we go, pretty groovy. So that was year one. Year one, we talked a lot about King Arthur, and I was like, oh, that was fun, and that'll probably be the first and last time I do that because, you know, we had about probably a third or a quarter this many people the first time I did this, and apparently they told their friends, and so they asked me to come back and do it again. And by the way, whoever among you who saw me that first year and sent emails to A-Kon saying, please have this guy come back because that was awesome, I really appreciate it. I don't know who you are, but whoever it was that did that, thank you so much. Thank you.
Good for your voice.
I approve. That's right. All right, so when I came back the second year, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I didn't bore them enough the first time, so I'll try something that's not quite as exciting as King Arthur. Didn't work. And so the second year, we talked about the hero's journey as a whole, about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, or what some people call the monomyth. I don't like to say monomyth because it suggests that all myths are the same, and I disagree with that. They may follow similar patterns, but they're not the same. And so the interesting thing about the Naruto's when it comes to the hero's journey is that it is one gigantic hero's journey with a bunch of tiny little hero's journeys thrown in. And this is the hero's journey. This is more or less the path by which every hero in almost every story and movie you've ever seen follow. From Star Wars to Naruto, this works. And usually you start out in the ordinary world. And the example I'd like to use for this one is when Naruto went to more or less learn how to do sage mode. All right. So he starts out in the ordinary world. You have a call to adventure, basically to go into the frog world. All right. Now sometimes you have what's called a refusal of the call. Naruto actually seems to skip that step usually. He doesn't really do the refusal of the call part. But if you've ever seen Star Wars, I doubt anyone here has seen it. It's kind of an obscure film. But if you've seen Star Wars, the part where he's like, I can't go and fight the Empire. I gotta stay here with my aunt and uncle and work on the farm. And then it's like, oh, they're dead. Huge problem solved, right? Usually when a hero has the call to adventure and refuses it, bad things happen that makes it where they have to go anyway. Kind of like, if you've ever seen Willow. A little bit more obscure. He finds it's about a dwarf who finds a baby, and the baby is the call to adventure, and he's like, I'll just find the nearest human and drop it off. That'll work out great. And that doesn't work out, because the first human he finds is a crazy swordsman who takes him on an adventure, and that's awesome. So like I said, that's the refusal of the call to adventure, but Naruto usually skips that step. And then you have the meeting of the mentor, and in this case, it was obviously Jiraiya to send him over to the frog world, and the crossing of the threshold, which basically is just a really fancy way of saying going from the ordinary world to a special world, and the special world is the frog sage realm. And so, while you're in the other world, while the hero's in the other world, they have to more or less go through a journey, and the journey is the important part, because the journey is where they get the good stuff from, like frog eyes. Frog eyes are awesome. But that's where you get the good stuff from. When you go on the journey, you go through tests and trials, and sometimes you have to face things that are creepy. Sometimes you have to slay a dragon. Sometimes you have to do different things. Sometimes you slay the dragon at the end. Sometimes you slay him in the middle. It kind of depends on how the story goes. But by getting through those trials and facing all those things, you go through your ordeal, and you are reborn from that world back into the ordinary world with some kind of a skill or a boon or a weapon or an ability that you can use to save the ordinary world or your village or whatever it is that you need to do. Like for example, if you're Anakin Skywalker and you need to come home and kill a bunch of sand people or kidnapping your mom. Works really well if you have a lightsaber. Come back with a lightsaber, slaughter a bunch of sand people. But that's not what we're talking about right now. I have ADHD, by the way. I'm sorry. I don't know if anyone noticed yet.
So with the hero journey, did you also say the same thing about when you train with B?
Yes, I do. Yeah. It's very much the same thing. Actually, I'm getting to that. Trust me, we're getting there. I promise. And sometimes the hero's journey, usually when you're going into this special world part right here, which we're going to get to in a second, you go into parts of the psyche that are actually like symbols of the unconscious, which we're going to get to that here in a minute. So anyway, you return, it says return with the elixir. I don't know, it's not an elixir, it's frog eyes, but you get to come back with your frog eyes and beat the crap out of people, and that works really great.
There you go.
And so anyway, okay, this thing's driving me nuts, hang on. That's not gonna happen. All right, I will deafen you guys with my voice. So anyway, the story as a whole for Naruto is about the journey to what? Like, what is Naruto's what's his big finish? Hokage, right? That's his big finish. Well, in order to get there, he's got to go through little tiny journeys along the way. All right. But in the end, like if he just became Hokage all of a sudden and was like, oh, that worked out well, that would be a really boring manga and anime. Like, hi, I'm Naruto Uzumaki and I want to be Hokage, and they're like, here's the hats. End of story. Good job. We don't want to. Yeah, that's obviously really boring for us. And I think it's interesting because I want to say this was back in the 80s, or no, so I guess it was the 70s. They took a bunch of episodes of Charlie's Angels, and they took them to Aboriginal tribes people and showed them to them. And they got bored in about 5 minutes. And the reason they got bored is because when you watch Charlie's Angels, they'd be like, let's go, Angels, and they'd jump out and they'd get in the car. And then it would cut to the next scene and they're already at their destination. And the Aborigines were like, what the heck was that? Like, what happened along the way? What did they see? Did they run into anybody? Like, what happened? And then, like, all they cared about was what happened between point A and B. And they could not understand why you would cut that part out. It's like the best part of every story they ever had. So anyway, in most older myths, that's a big part of it. They don't do the cut through thing. You have things that happen. But anyway, but this is a part of this is one of the hero's journeys that he's done that's kind of near and dear to my heart because of what happens afterwards. After he defeats pain and is not only able to overcome, the trials and situations that he had to go through in order to obtain sage mode, but also to get over hate and anger and resentment over the fact that pain killed his teacher, Jiraiya, which I can only imagine. That's a very difficult thing to go through. But he doesn't become Hokage, but he gets the thing he was really wanting, which is this. Yeah.
Good.
And I cried when that happened.
Congratulations.
So anyway, as I was saying earlier, when you go through a hero's journey, sometimes you move through parts of the psyche. And the psyche, or the unconscious and subconscious, was something that was diagrammed by a guy named Carl Jung. I don't want to bore you guys with the history of Carl Jung, so you can Google that later if you would like. There's a lot more to get through, we just don't have the time, and I don't want people to start walking out. So, speaking of, if you guys see me check my phone, my better half actually bought me a really nice watch so I would stop looking at my phone during my lectures. And of course, I left it sitting on my nightstand and didn't bring it. And it looks really weird if I'm sitting here doing this with no watch on. So I'm actually just making sure I don't run out of time. So if you will please forgive me if I do check my phone every now and then. I promise I'm not like updating my Facebook or anything. So this is what we call the personal unconscious, or the self. Let's call it the self, according to Carl Jung. And everything over here at the top, all this white stuff up here, this is all the stuff that you show the world. This is the collective conscious. This is everything we see, do, hear, feel, and understand. And this is the part, the persona, which means mask, is what you show people. That's the you the world gets to see. That's the not the real you, but the you. It's probably a nice you, but that's the you that you allow the world to see. And the persona is heavily influenced by the ego, because you want people to think you're a nice person, right? So you do things that are polite, even in times when maybe you don't want to, or maybe you don't. Some people don't. But the ego influences your persona in the sense that you use the persona to feed the ego, in the sense that you want people to see you a certain way. And we all do it. It's okay. Nothing wrong with that. We should do it, because the next part is scarier. You have the shadow, and the shadow is creepy. That's the real you. That's the you that you do not want people to know about. That's the you that when you're standing at the edge of the cliff next to a person goes, I could totally just come right off right now. Just let him go. There's no one here to see me. And you go, what the hell, brain? Why are you saying this? And that's the shadow. The shadow is that part of us that have you ever seen a toddler? Okay, a 2-year-old on a tantrum, in the middle of a tantrum? That's the shadow right there. There's a reason they're small. If 2-year-olds were my size, we'd all be dead. Seriously, take a toy away from a 2-year-old sometimes and see how they react. They would kill you if they could. They would, but luckily they're small enough and they're strong. Have you felt that? Does anyone here have kids? I've got kids. I tell you, it scared me to death when my first child, my daughter, became a toddler. It scared me to death how strong that kid was. I was like, I'm trying to overpower an infant, and I can barely do it. I was afraid I would hurt her, but I didn't. And please don't call CPS on me. I can hear him now. Local mythologist arrested for child abuse. I don't know if they would refer to me as local mythologist, though. That would be kind of a weird way to do it. And then you have the personal unconscious, and this is the realm of dreams. And it's also the place where the self kind of is divided. The stuff up here and the stuff down here, they interact in kind of the dream world. That's why we dream about stuff that hasn't ever actually happened to us. Right? Like we even dream about stuff we've never actually seen before. which there's a reason for that. Because a lot of times the things that we dream about are actually representations of things that we're dealing with in our real life, but the symbols make it possible for everything up here to kind of make sense to everything down here. Like, you ever had one of those dreams where, like, you need to get out of bed and there's snakes all over the floor? Yeah, I hate that dream. And what I hate it worse when you have to pee. It gets a lot worse when you have to pee. But like lately it hasn't happened. I haven't had that dream a lot. But that may mean that you have issues with a parent or a female parent or a spouse, believe it or not. To quote something, who's the young, like, is there anyone here under the age of 14? Okay, we're good to go. One case that Carl Jung, actually, he did a lot of dream interpretation stuff, and he had this client who kept having this recurring dream where he'd hear his mother knocking from inside of a closet for him to let her out. Like, we're not even going to get into that. He goes over to open the closet, and a snake is in there and jumps out and bites him in the junk.